Hello and welcome to Fireside Fairytales. My name is Rory and you're watching Varietal Literature's YouTube channel. And if you've never been here before, hello and thanks for stopping by. This is a cozy little corner of the internet for people who love narrative. And if you are watching live, there is a live chat that has a little crop of potatoes growing right at the moment. And I see in there Tammy Morelli, whose shoulder hopefully is feeling better than last week, which took her out of the chat. GS and Uncle Kitty. It's good to see you folks. If you're not watching live, what you can do though is down in the description below there will be timestamps. We're going to read several sort of short stories today. If you've ever watched any of my videos on Sunken Castles, Evil Poodles, German translated collections before from Jürgen Hubert, then that won't be a surprise. It's usually a long one or two and then a lot of little snippets of various pieces of urban legends and folklore from around various German regions. Hello, Jump Store. They were putting a pumpkin cake in the oven. I don't know what a pumpkin cake is, but I can imagine. All the pumpkin I've ever had was always in pie form or cheesecake. All right. Well, today we are discussing the monster birds of Germany. Well, I mean, one of them's kind of a monster. We're going to see a couple of stories about what's called the Habergeiss, but most of them are just kind of weird bird themed stories, everything from like ghosts to there's one here that I don't know what the implication of the bird is, but it is, I don't know, it's fun. We'll see how you feel about it. I don't really have much of an introduction here today, other than my usual sort of caveats. If you've never really been here before, just an FYI, there is a tendency to think of folklore as like a thing for kids to learn moral lessons, and there's definitely stories that are like that. But when we talk about folklore, we are talking about the full range of folklore, which does include stuff like that. But tonight, you're mostly going to see stuff that doesn't really seem to have a point other than supposedly it happened. Some of it has a point, but it's strange to our modern ears, or some of it is obviously probably had a point at one point, but it is lost in time and different changing moral and ethical structures about concerns like some of these. That is not the right thing. Why is it playing that? Okay, well, hopefully it doesn't keep doing that. Let me check something. Sorry, none of you know what's going on, but it started playing a different song, which is a problem because the song it was playing is copyrighted. All right. Anyways, yes, if you've never been here before, just be aware, this isn't necessarily for kids. I wouldn't say anything tonight is super bad if you do want to watch with a kid, but I think they're just going to think it's weird and not know what's going on because I'm grown up and I do too. GS says we've given up trying to find a point. Fair thing to do. Okay. Well, I won't keep babbling because I don't have much more to say other than all the stories tonight come to us from Sunken Castles Evil Poodles. Sunken Castles Evil Poodles is a collection of recently translated folklore from the incomparable Jürgen Hubert. Jürgen is based out of Germany. He is, in a technical sense, an amateur folklorist, but honestly, if you look at the history of folklore, it's all amateurs. I'm an amateur. We're all amateurs. Jürgen translates German folklore, and he does so on the backs of Patreon supporters. And you should support that Patreon. I support that Patreon. It's only a few dollars a month, and you help support turning a lot of German folklore collections into English, often and almost exclusively for the first time. So a lot of these stories really have never been Probably never really been said out loud in English before. Certainly not these translations. So with that said, let's get to the stories. The first thing we're going to read about is called a Habergeiss. Habergeiss is like an owl with a billy goat head? Like a goat head? Other than that, I'll let the stories tell themselves. Our first tale tonight is the first of a collection of short snippets that come to us from Sunken Castle's Evil Poodles, a collection of translations from the original German by Jürgen Hubert, who you can support at the Patreon, which is pinned in a comment below if you're not watching this live. And it concerns a creature called the Habergeiss. Roughly speaking, a horned owl, except it has a goat head. Near Nutsiras, the people say that the Habergeiss is a bird with yellow feathers and the voice of a goat. It only becomes visible to certain favored mortals in the beginning of May, and its bleating voice is just as much a herald of spring as the call of the cuckoo. But more worldly people of this region don't believe in this marvelous yellow-feathered spring-announcing bird and say that the Habergeiss is nothing more than an ordinary and common night owl. I do like the idea that someone's like, you hear that? That is the magical forebear of spring. And another guy's like, pretty sure that's an owl? During the quiet winter nights, people often hear sounds in the forest close to Brigand's Forest, which almost resemble the bleating of a goat. People commonly attribute this bleating to the so-called Habergeiss. In truth, this creature is nothing more than a night owl. Boo-boo. It supposedly has the overall shape of a goat or a cat, but with the feet of a horse. Its cry indicates an imminent misfortune, particularly the impending death of a person living in the village. So there's a lot to absorb there. And before we carry on to some of the other stories, let's try to absorb it. What are we being told? I think probably the most important and valid thing here is that there isn't a lot of consistency. Now, is there? You'd be forgiven for... I think that's a little too hot. I'm fiddling with my sound a bit, so if it's crapping on your end, that's me. Anyways, I think one of the things that really stands out about this is, well, they agree that there's something about a magical owl out there in this region called a Habergeiss. They do not agree at all on what it does, who it is, what it means, or even what it looks like. And actually, as we go along, we're going to see that that remains to be the case. Lots of these different accounts are very, very different. GS says this originates from the very odd sounds that owl makes. I agree. I think that's probably going to be the common thread here. Let's carry on, because we have lots of little short things on the Habergeiss here, and then we will move on to some other stuff. Our second story on the Habergeiss is called On Owls, and it also comes to us from Sunken Castle's Evil Poodles. A reminder, you should support Jürgen Hubert's translations down in the pinned comment below. If you put the heart and the right foot of a Habergeiss, or Strux ortrus, on a sleeping person, then this causes them to tell all their secrets while asleep if they are questioned. If you carry both of these beneath the armpit, No dog will bite you, no matter how aggressive it is or how fiercely it barks at you. The footprint of a Habergeiss is called a Gespa. Gespa. I don't know what the S there is about. It is very dangerous to step into a Gespa. And immediately, the painful Geisschuss, or gull shot, hits the foot, which is often so nasty that it is almost impossible to cure. The so-called Geisschuss is a stinging pain in the foot, similar to worsening old rheumatism, cramps, and gout. But it is believed to be caused by infernal forces. Example, the Habergeiss. If a human or animal steps on the Gespa, their bare feet, the Geisschuss immediately enters the limb. Such dangerous Habergeisspa, or Habergeiss Gespa, or tracks, are often seen pressed into trails during wet weather. They have 3 toes in the front and a significantly smaller one in the back. See, this one doesn't have horse legs. That these Gespa are so baleful derives from the fact that the Habergeiss are damned birds of the devil, and possibly the devil himself. Thus, it is only possible to cure their ailments through strong blessings, prayer, and incense, and by putting herbs on the limb, which are sanctified and blessed, which having been harvested during Druskin, which apparently is a period of time with religious significance in Catholicism. It has already been mentioned that the lachon, or corpse chicken, the small owl, announces death with its call. Commit, or come with. Now, if you are sitting there asking yourself, what did any of that mean? That was a lot of information that didn't seem to have a thread. That's accurate, you know. To sort of build on, if this is for some reason your first stream of this you're watching, just be aware that, like, there's a tendency to look at folklore as something of a cohesive world design. And that comes from us mostly encountering single author works in the modern day, like Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, or, George R. R. Martin's Game of Thrones, or these sort of cohesive worlds that are interactive. But folklore is spread across thousands of miles over thousands of years. And so what you'll get is entirely contradictory things from one neighbor to another. Also, I'm not drinking Zevia today. Instead, I'm drinking bubbly. Just like Mom used to spray. Carrying on with the Habergeiss. So far we've seen something, I will say some trends start to emerge, although they are incompatible. Some are just, they beckon spring and they're just a weird creature. Others are like, oh, well, it's an owl. And then the third version, which all folklore, especially from Germany, seems to boil down to at some point is, oh, actually, it's the devil. We will see more of that as we go, that it is the devil. Our next story continues on with this little cycle of Habergeiss translations. It also comes to us, therefore, from Sunken Castle's Evil Poodles, and it's called the Habergeiss (Styria). Styria. A brazen boy went home very late one evening. In order to pass the time, he yelled all sorts of things. Among other, he shouted, "Bah! Bah! Bah!" Then the same call came from the nearby forest, but in an uncanny manner. "Bah! Bah! Bah!" The boy, who believed this reply to be merely an echo, enjoyed the sound and repeated his shouting, "Ba, ba, ba, ma, ba, ba." The answer followed again, but when he shouted it for the third time, "Ba, ba, ba," an eerie animal with a giant horned goat's head, the feathered body of a bird, and 3 legs hopped towards him, and it worked the boy over in such a pitiful manner that he reached home half dead. This was the Habergeiss, which horribly mauls everyone who mocks it. So new lore for the Habergeiss. It is the forebearer of spring. It can force a person to tell you the truth in their sleep if you manage to get its foot and heart, but it has to be the right foot and heart. If you step in its footprint, you get basically gout. It's from the devil. It's not from the devil. It has horse legs. It has 3 toes. It has 3 legs, and a giant horned goat's head. It does not want to be mocked, or it'll beat you up. Uncle Kitty says, AKA evil chicken, which was a reference to a Colombian folklore called Pollo Maligno. There is something I haven't looked at. I bet Colombia's got good stories. All right. Carrying on. The Habergeiss turns the oat black during moonlit nights. Now, just as a note here, oat apparently shares a meaning with the word here that's being used for goat, or something to that effect. I'm not the translator. There are notes in the full collection from Jurgen. They are under copyright, unlike the story, so I do my best not to read them. If you want to read all those notes on translation notes and stuff like that, they are brilliantly interesting and well formed. Go to his Patreon and support him, and you'll get the book. Anyways, the Habergeiss turns the oat black during moonlit nights, sits down on the shoulder of nighttime wanderers, and blows death into their ears. Despite its gigantic head, it often comes through the keyhole and haunts the house at night and squeezes sleepers by putting its heavy head on their chests. It's genuinely chilling. In order to protect themselves against the Habergeiss, as well as against witches, people often cut out crosses of willows on root moss, which have been blessed on Palm Sunday, and nail them on the door. All right, our last little section of Habergeiss stuff, and then we will talk about the Rooster of the Deep and a ghost chicken. Which is our longer story that will end it. Our next tale is our last tale on the Habergeiss, not our last tale of the night, and it comes to us again from the collection Sunken Castle's Evil Poodles. It's called the Habergeiss, but this time Lower Austria. The farmers in St. Peter am Nevid, have their own mills, which of course are not in operation for most of the year. Such an idle mill was once repeatedly set into motion by an unknown force. The owner of the mill decided to secretly watch the mill in order to investigate this mystery, and one day he saw the Habergeiss messing around on the planks of the mill wheel. In order to end these infernal pranks, the farmer tore down the mill and rebuilt it at another spot. The ghostly Habergais is believed to be the devil. Now, it is interesting how often we do see this. Like, we saw this in the Icelandic stories we were reading, where it wasn't the devil, it was the good people, the little people of the hills, fairy people, if you're new, who would come out of who were knocking on her door. And the priest told her the same thing, to burn the house down and then build another one at a different corner of the property. I wonder how many of these are like fault lines with gas leaks. like cave fumes or something coming up. Jumstore says, Habergeiss, it was just a prank, bro. Exactly, yeah. Why would you burn it down? I mean, I guess it answers its own question, because people believe they were being haunted by the devil, so it was only going to get worse. Every time I hear these tales about, they're standing in the night and they see this terrible beast come, I remember this time I used to deliver newspapers, quite a few of them, all around my neighborhood. No, way beyond my neighborhood. All around my town and the town over. I did a lot. And I remember one night, you get a healthy fear of dogs when you're delivering newspapers. And I remember one night, it was dark, and I had to deliver to this door. And in my mind, as I was approaching the door, I saw like a dog get up by the mailbox, and I sort of ran back to the car, and I told my mom, I was like, there's a dog by the door. I saw it get up. I can't do it. So my mom or my sister, we used to deliver all together, went to deliver the newspaper, and it was just a pile of jackets. Why did it look like it sat up to me? I don't know. It was nighttime and I was scared. So when I read these stories about how they saw the Habergeiss and whatever else, like, I don't know, did they just see an owl and then they were like, it definitely had a head of a goat? Uncle Kitty says, I wonder if insurance was around at these times. I'm sure it wasn't as prevalent. Wasn't there a thing at one point where, like, insurance was seen as gambling by the church and so people weren't getting it? Maybe I'm making that up. Uncle Kitty says, we have devil birds. Guess the insurance company will have to pay us to burn it all and start over. Jumpstore says, sounds like the Mothman. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's a good example. Anyways, there's the Habergeiss. He could be the portend of spring. An owl, the devil, a horse creature, generally they all seem to agree, a goat of some sort that would beat you up if you mock it, pretend the death of somebody in the village. Oh, what else? Like 6 other things. At the end of the day, I think GS wins. I think these are tales of people being weirded out by the odd noises that owls can make. All right. Carrying on. We are going to move on to a thing called the Rooster of the Deep. I have absolutely no context that helps you with this. I do not understand what the rooster has to do with anything in this. It's a collection of short little snippets, and what they have in common is an underground rooster. That doesn't seem to affect the action or anything like that, just seems to be there. Some are a little more connected, but they get very disconnected. More carbonated perfume. Our next section does not concern the Habergeiss, and rather concern something called the Rooster of the Deep. It comes to us from the same collection, Sunken Castles, Evil Poodles, translated by Jürgen Hubert, who you should support at his Patreon pin below. There is a very deep well in the swampy river valley at Petersbrunn, close to Leitstetten in Upper Bavaria. The water is pulled up via a pulley. Old people say that the well was dug so deeply that the workers down below heard the crowing of the rooster from the deep. A large farm, this is number 2. A large farm lies to the west of the Wurzharit in Württemberg. I think I'm saying that pretty badly, by the way. One late evening, this farmer was visited by an old woman who cursed the city of Wurzach after no one there was willing to grant her hospitality for the night. And when she drew water from the well with a spoon, she said, "As surely as I shall pour out this spoon of water, so surely Wurzbach will be sunk by tomorrow." And the next morning the city had sunk beneath the ground itself, and people later heard roosters crowing from the deep. See what I mean? Like, what is the rooster about? Number 3. The forest of Hattenberg lies between Breitenbronn and Weimetzhofen in Swabia. There was a hill in it which was excavated in order to obtain gravel for the construction of roads. All sorts of things were found in it, such as coals, bones, broken pieces of containers, and so forth. A human skeleton was dug up as well. However, it was not lying horizontally within the hill, but stood vertically. According to legends, there used to be a castle on the Hattenberg. A donkey used to transport the water there, and when the animal had not been seen for several days, the farmers suspected something must have happened on the Hattenberg, and traveled there. And they were startled when they discovered that the castle was no longer visible, for it had sunk into the depths. However, 3 days afterwards, people heard the rooster crowing from the deep. Just a word, I've mentioned this before, and you'll notice that it's in the title, Sunken Castles, Evil Poodles. Sunken Castles is a really common piece of folklore in Germany in particular. You do kind of see it other places, but mostly Germany. And that is because what would happen is farmers would be digging up, land to till it for farms, and they would find castles effectively underground. Now, we in our modern era do understand that what happens is not so much that they sink. I mean, they do sink a bit, but more so that soil will build over things unless you do things to maintain them. But then, comes the myth of, well, this used to be a huge castle and then it sunk into the ground. And we've seen stories where that was like punishment for some ill deed of a princess or a curse or something like that, and that there's treasure in them and whatever else. Also, since I mentioned it, since I'm describing the title, Evil Poodles, it's a poodle, but probably not the poodle you're thinking of. Standard poodles, not like toy poodles. Standard poodles were the main dog in Germany for a lot of history, so when they describe black dogs, they are usually talking about black poodles and sometimes name them such. And black dogs are usually the devil, so evil poodles. Tammy said, oh, we're talking about peacocks? Oh my god, yes. I used to live in a town that was like a little farming town, and there was a peacock around at one of the farms. I'm trying to remember exactly what happened, but anyways, horrible noises. Beautiful tales. Scream like a nightmare. All right. Now, the thing is here, I don't really have an explanation of what the rooster crowing in the deep is. It just seems that there's a general understanding that there's a rooster down deep and you can hear it. What it's meant to signify or anything, I don't know. Which brings us to the only sort of like coherent long tale I have tonight on German monster birds. Which is it's not super long, but it's longer than any of the other things we've read. And it concerns a somewhat tragic story. So, if you're already feeling a little fragile, it might not be your cup of tea. Also, I'm going to change our ambience a little bit. Something more appropriate to the tone. This one's about chickens. Our last tale of the night is called The Hen with Her Gold Yellow Chicks on the Kynsburg. And it concerns a hen. A long time ago, a hen could occasionally be seen in one particular chamber of an old castle, which always emerged from the stove in the room. The lord of the castle had never seen it and didn't believe it either, but the inhabitants of the castle frequently talked about the black hen and her gold yellow chicks, and people tried to avoid spending the night within that room whenever possible. Once, an outsider knight arrived at the castle at dusk and asked for a place to stay for himself. As well as his squire and his 2 steeds. Oh, I lost my background. As he declared himself to be a friend of the lord of the castle, stating the name Hermann von Reichenbach, the gate was open to him, and there was no lack of either a friendly reception or hospitality for the tired visitors. But the lord of the castle gave the order to give the guests the chamber which the servants believed to be the abode of an uncanny spirit. After the lords had had dinner, and the guest and his squire were assigned their quarters. 2 clean beds opposite to each other, and between them there was a table and 2 chairs. When the servants left, a lamp remained on the table as nighttime illumination, and it lit up the room only weakly. Knight and Squire quickly left to rest, for they wanted to get an early start for their journey the next day, but as soon as it was dawn, the visitors sent a message to the lord of the castle that he was in a mood to depart. Only urgent pleas of the lord to wait until breakfast was ready were able to prevent him from leaving immediately. Once the lord of the castle had dressed, the visitors were called to the breakfast table. The latter stepped towards his host with a somewhat disturbed stare. Music's a little out there. The latter stepped towards his host with a somewhat disturbed stare and a face that was strained from a restless night. They bid each other a good morning, but the knight of Kynsburg did not fail to notice the apparent changes in his guest and worriedly asked him whether he had slept well. "I have not been able to sleep much," replied the guest and shrugged his shoulders. "And who dared disturb you?" shouted the lord of the castle with an angry glance to the servants who had assembled in the dining hall. "Not your living housemates," replied the guest, "but another spiritual force. When my squire and I, had gone to bed yesterday evening, I'd soon fallen asleep. I might have slept for about an hour when I was awoken by something I could not identify. When I looked up, I saw that the lamp was still burning well, and the tower clock had just struck 11. A small noise drew my attention, and I rose up in my bed and turned my gaze to the spot from which the noise seemed to have come, and at that moment a black hen emerged from beneath the stove, accompanied by a few small chicks. She walked them to the center of the room, clucked and scratched there, ruffled her feathers, and screeched as if a predator was near. And then she beat her wings so strongly that the lamp standing on the table flickered and threatened to go out. Then she walked around the entire chamber and finally came before my bed, and then she fluttered up, rose up high, and the lamp went out. And in the pale light of the moon which shone through the windows, I noticed that she fluttered up high again after a while, and now the lamp again shone brightly, and then she calmed down, went back, picked around on the floor. The chicks gathered round her, and she vanished behind the stove with her offspring. I was in doubt whether I'd seen a true event or whether some kind of apparition had fooled me. A while later, after I'd recovered a bit from my initial astonishment, I rose up and took the lamp and examined the spot, but no traces of a hen's nest, no hen, and no chicks were to be seen. My squire had heard and seen nothing of this, for he slept so deeply that I had to repeatedly call his name after I'd stood up. An uncanny dread had overcome me.
And even though everything remained silent throughout the rest of the night, I nevertheless could retain no rest. And no matter how inconsequential this operation might have been, my feelings indicated something dreadful was concealed behind it. Thus I stand before you ready to travel earlier than I had intended. Farewell. Have thanks for the hospitality. And don't worry yourself further about the spirit visions of a guest.
The knight embarked on his journey, and he was allowed to leave in peace, but the discussion of the hen and her chicks had now become louder. All the older servants told what they had heard in earlier times, and the Lord Castle could no longer doubt what he had not believed earlier when he'd heard it from the domestic staff, and which had now been confirmed by a visitor. Even the castle priest suggested that it would be a God-pleasing effort to examine what these strange visions meant. Then the lord of the castle ordered tearing the stove away, and a large space beneath the floors was discovered there, and when it was opened, a small chest was discovered which, when opened, contained the long decayed skeletons of 2 small children. The lord of the castle sought advice in his monastery. The neighboring Grusau and the abbot commanded burying the remains in hallowed ground with quiet ceremony. It was never discovered who had brought them into this chamber, and likely committed an atrocity. There was no speculation, and this deed must have been perpetrated in deep secret. But no one has seen the hen since then, who was believed to have been the unfortunate mother of the children who were murdered at such an early age, and which had then accompanied her forever as golden yellow chicks. And there you go. There are more bird stories, actually. That's enough for today, I think. Oh, Witchery's here. Hello, Witchery. Good to see you. And Hira's here. Good to see you. Did I miss anybody else? I'm sorry if I did. Anyhow. Well, there you go, folks. Tammy like the Rooster. Thank you, Tammy. Good to see you. Witchery says, I have plans for a mossy fairy tale sort of bag. Making a bag. Oh, fun. Well, there you go. If you are interested in sort of animal-themed folklore, that is the theme of the last few months and maybe the entire year. We'll see. That Jurgen's been doing on his Patreon. Again, all these stories came from, translated from Jurgen Hubert, who is Sunken Castles Evil Poodles on Patreon. Go support that for a few dollars and you get literally hundreds of stories. Yeah, I don't know what the combining theme would have been with all of them other than just birds make weird noises, and weird noises are the devil. Anyhow. Witchery says it's good to see you, Rory. It's good to see you as well. Jumpstore says animal-themed folklore is the best kind, in my opinion. It definitely has some of the most, like, interesting avenues it can go on. Oh, yes. Uncle Kitty says, look up Pollo Maligno, Rory. It's quite the laugh. Awesome. GS says we will be doing 1 year of terrifying chickens. Chickens are already terrifying. They figured it out on their own. But anyways, yeah, I'm sure I will read the rest of the bird stories at some point. For now, though, Witchery says, if it's not the devil, are you trying hard enough to explain what it is? That's a fair point. For now, though, thank you very much, Witchery, Uncle Kitty, GS, Tammy Morelli, Jumpstore, Hira. Anybody else I'm forgetting? Anybody else out there who is lurking, thank you so much for your lurk. But Jumpstore says Jew theme folklore makes me. Jumpstore is Jewish. Makes me bite down on my lips and wonder if I should laugh or be offended. So maybe I'll do both. I mean, it depends on which ones you're talking about. Because in Sunken Castle's Evil Poodles, there is a section of, how do I phrase this? Not Jewish folklore, folklore about Jews, which is a very important distinction. There's a reason I've never read it. I'm not saying it shouldn't exist, because it definitely preserves a history people want to forget that definitely predates the 20th century. But good Lord, is it evil. And completely fine with it, not in any sort of edifying way. But I don't know, I'll leave that to you folks to discover. Jurgen has good commentary around it too, if you do read it. Anyhow, as for me, I will keep the fire going. You folks have a good sleep.